Maybe the number one thing that Orioles fans have been waiting for from this front office has finally happened. A contract extension for a young star, and it's 8 years for Samuel Basallo. We'll break down this deal from every angle coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Sunday, August 24th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are breaking down the Samuel Basallo extension, which was announced back on Friday. We'll talk about the 8-year deal he gets, the financials of it, what it means for kind of his positioning with the Orioles moving forward. Then we'll chat about how it affects some other Orioles, most specifically Adley Rutschman. And finally, what does it mean for the rest of these O's? And could more extensions be coming as we move forward? Now, I do apologize, right? This extension came out on Friday. You're getting an episode here on Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon. If you did listen to Friday's episode, which was a recap of game one between the Orioles and the Astros, then a little chat about, how much time Felix Bautista could miss with this shoulder surgery that he got last week and could be out all of next year. Make sure to go check that one out if you have not already. But I mentioned that I would be on vacation this weekend, leaving early Friday morning, heading to the Jersey Shore with some friends, and just kind of getting back here on Sunday evening as I begin to record. Didn't have any equipment with me. And of course, when I'm gone, away from the laptop, away from the microphone, something huge happens with the Orioles. So I appreciate your patience for getting this episode, but I wanted to get it to you as soon as possible, get kind of an early bonus episode coming out. We usually go Monday through Friday, coming out here on a Sunday so I can get my thoughts and break down the entirety of this Basallo deal. So it was the big news from Friday. We got the announcement, and kind of Jeff Passan broke it, and eventually the Orioles finally confirmed that it happened. Annie Kusko was on it as well from the Baltimore Banner. But the Orioles have signed their 21-year-old catcher, Samuel Basallo, their top prospect and the number 3 prospect in all of baseball, according to FanGraphs. That's the highest he is ranked among all of those lists at the moment. It is an 8-year, $67 million contract that he has signed with the Orioles that begins next season. So those 8 years, $67 million starts in 2026. Now, first of all, a breakdown of the financials, because when you hear contract extension and you hear 8 years, $67 million, my first reaction was, wow, that is incredibly cheap. Even though Basallo has been in the big leagues for a week, that feels incredibly not low budget, but low cost for the Orioles and a really good deal for the team. Basallo will make $1 million per year each of the next 3 seasons. So in 2026, 27, and 28, he will make $1 million. Now, if he didn't sign this extension and he were a pre-arb player, he would probably make around $500,000 in each of those seasons. So he is upping what he's making each of the next 3 years. Then in 2029, the contract starts to go up because 2029 is when he would have hit arbitration for the first time. Remember the way MLB contracts work. Guys get to the big leagues, their first 3 years in the bigs, they are generally pre-arb players. They're making, it's right around $500,000. And then they get to arbitration for their final 3 years. You get 6 years of team control before a guy becomes a free agent. In those final 3 seasons, the money you make is based on your performance in the previous season. So guys who are superstars, can escalate it up to 10, 15, 20 plus $1 million. Guys, not so much, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus as they move along in. For Samuel Basallo, though, he is someone who could have gotten big money in arbitration. And so from the Orioles side, this certainly keeps the cost down for those years. He will make $4 million in 2029, $7 million in 2030, and then $11 million in 2031. Now, if he wouldn't have gotten an extension, he would have been due to be a free agent after the 2031 season. So realistically, the 8-year deal basically buys out his 6 years of arbitration and adds 2 seasons onto that. And the price goes up there as well. He would make $15 million in 2032 and another $15 million in 2033. Now, if you're doing that math and you're saying, Connor, that doesn't add up to $67 million, well, there is also a $5 million signing bonus that Basallo gets for this deal, and there is a team option for 2034. So really, there's a good chance this is a 9-year deal and not just an 8-year deal. It is a team option for $18 million for the 2034 season, basically meaning at the end of 2033, if the Orioles still feel that Samuel Basallo is worth paying him at least $18 million for one more season, which I can't imagine why he won't be, they will pick up that team option and have him for one more, still fairly cheap year if he's the player we think he could be at $18 million. If the Orioles decide to decline that team option for whatever reason, it is a $7 million buyout that would be paid to Basallo. So the $7 million buyout plus the $5 million bonus plus all the years of the 8 adds up to 8 years, $67 million. Now, there's also escalators in the contract. What that means is, if he hits certain awards or he hits certain number of games played behind the plate, there's certain statistical categories that if he hits, 30 plus home runs in a season or whatever it may be, those are examples of those things. I don't think we've gotten full reporting on what the exact escalators are, but the deal can be worth as much as $88.5 million up from the 67. So I think it's, if he can get MVP votes or all-star games, and then also if he catches a lot behind the dish, he can make $21.5 more million throughout this time as well. But even if the Orioles max out the amount of money here, right? He gets the full $88.5 million, and they give him the $18 million for the team option in 2034. Even if they do all that, it would only be about a 9-year, $107 million extension. And if Samuel Basallo is maxing it out, that means he's playing at his top level, which will be a star hitter in the big leagues. And this is so cool because it is the largest extension ever for a pre-arbitration catcher in Major League Baseball history. No catcher before hitting arbitration, so before being in his 3rd or 4th year in the big leagues, has signed a contract worth this much money, $67 million, because catchers tend to break down earlier than any other players, and it can be risky to give them long-term deals. And it's also the 4th largest contract in Orioles history, not just contract extension, 4th largest contract in Orioles history. Only Chris Davis, Adam Jones, and Miguel Tejada have made more money from the Orioles in the past in one single contract. Now, that's kind of the financials of it all. Why do the Orioles do this from a baseball side? Let's start there. I mean, Samuel Basallo, again, is their number 1 prospect. He just turned 21. He's the number 3 overall prospect in baseball. They just called him up, and he dominated through the minors, had big-time power. It's insane batted ball data. He's got amazing bat-to-ball skills for Basallo. You just look at his data in AAA, right? I mean, 21% barrel rate, that is like Aaron Judge levels, a 57% hard hit rate, also close to Aaron Judge levels. He's averaging 94.2 miles per hour at exit velocity. Like, it's absurd stuff that he's doing. Yes, he chases a little bit, but it's nothing awful. And the skills are all there for him to be not just a star, but a superstar, at least at the plate, right? There are questions for him defensively, but superstar level potentially for him when he is at the dish, hitting from the left side, and could hit for some gigantic power. And that's something he has already done in the minor leagues. Like in AAA this season, Basallo had 321 plate appearances. He hit 23 homers, 270, 377, 589 slash, 150 WRC plus. And he had a career high walk rate this year. Like, he was getting better in AAA as a 20-year-old. His 13.7% walk rate was his highest since 2023 and the best of his career. His strikeout rate, yeah, he strikes out a little bit, right? 24% of the time is not crazy low, but it's also not anywhere close to crazy high, especially for a guy for the amount of power he has. You'll see a lot of young players who have this great power, these great exit velocities, but they'll be running 30+% strikeout rates. That is not Samuel Basallo. It's awesome. I mean, you've heard the Yordan Alvarez comparisons. I think the best comparison that I see from Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs is if Rafael Devers could catch. That is what the comparison is for my kind of prospect analyst of choice. That is very, very exciting. And if that is a guy you're getting for 8 years, $67 million, less than $10 million per year, that is an absurdly good deal for the Orioles. And the Orioles clearly think the bat is special enough for him to be one of the best hitters in the majors. That's the way at least it's looked throughout the minor leagues. And he's looked really comfortable in his first week in the major leagues too. And defensively, there are questions, right? His main position is catcher. There are questions back there. It's been a learning process so far. He's going to catch a lot more now with Adley Rutschman back on the injured list. And I mean, Adley may be out for the season. We'll see how this latest oblique injury affects him in the next couple of weeks. But Basallo has also shown, he played a lot of first base in the minors, and he actually is one of the best defensive first basemen in the Orioles system. Like, he got much better over there. You can, of course, DH him whenever you need to. And even if he is a part-time catcher, he's giving you more value at that position than a comparable hitter who's, out in left field or standing at first base. If he can be at least solid back there, he doesn't have to be Adley level. He doesn't have to be great, but if he's solid, that helps you even more if you can stick him at catcher. I don't see Basallo ever being a true, every single day catcher. It's certainly possible. Maybe that's a little strong to say I'd never see that happening. But I think where even peak Basallo is a guy who's catching half the games, right? And then is DHing or playing first base in the rest of them. So he's in the lineup almost every day. So you keep him off his feet and his knees a little bit more by getting him at DH at first, but making sure that bat is always in the lineup. So if you're the Orioles, that's why you lock up this player. This could be a guy who, not full impact wise, could be better than Gunnar, because Gunnar still gives you a lot of other things. But with the bat, this could be purely a better hitter than Gunnar Henderson is. That's how special Basallo could be. And I get it. This is could be. He's played 7 major league games. He just turned 21 years old. There's a lot of time to go here. But that's what he could be. That's from the baseball side. Let's talk a little bit more about the financial side coming up next. Why do the Orioles do this deal? I think we've talked about it some already. This is a great bargain for them. But also, why does Basallo do this deal? Because you could argue, isn't he leaving a lot of money on the table? We'll chat about that coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. It's perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. If it's golf, if it's not golf, if it's whatever it may be, you need a little boost, 5-Hour Energy is there. And if it is golf, it's all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the U.S. So tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. So for Samuel Basallo, he is a special talent. He has the potential to be, again, Rafael Devers, who catches and people actually like in the clubhouse, right? There's a chance he is Yordan Alvarez, who catches. That is the special bat that he has, and has the ability to play behind the dish. So we've talked about, why do the Orioles do this, right? I've seen some comments like, oh, you're committing this much money to a guy who's played 6 big league games. Why are you not going after Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson and others? And we will get to that in the third segment. But yes, it is a risk to commit years and money to a catcher who's been in the big leagues less than a week. That is 100% valid. But if he's good, this deal is a gigantic steal for the Orioles. Let's say they didn't extend him at all and he just went through arbitration, right? He won his 3 years pre-arb, he won his 3 arbitration years. Let's compare him to Manny Machado. Manny never got extended. Manny was a great player. Manny is a better player than Samuel Basallo probably will be. That's just the reality of the situation. Machado's a Hall of Famer. But Machado also missed a lot of time with injuries, so that maybe brings him back down closer to what Basallo could be. Manny Machado made about $34 million total in his 6 years with the Orioles, through the 3 pre-arbitration years and the 3 arbitration years before he was, of course, traded at the 2018 deadline and then hit free agency. With inflation, what Machado made back then, ending in 2018, $34 million, is worth about $43 million now. In those same 6 years under this extension, Basallo will make $25 million, right? You think Basallo could be a Machado level hitter, and you're basically saving $18 million in those 6 years. So that already makes good financial sense for the Orioles. And you're buying out and adding 3 more years, right? He would have been a free agent, Basallo, after 2031. This deal, if you pick up the team option, which they're probably going to do, signs him for also 2032, 33, and 34. So you save big during ARB, but essentially you also get to sign him for an extra, what it comes down to is a 3-year, $48 million deal after that. That is essentially the same contract the Orioles gave to Tyler O'Neill last offseason. I think Samuel Basallo is probably going to be better than Tyler O'Neill for the same price, and that's not even considering what inflation will be when it comes to that, 7 years from now. It'll probably be looking even better for the Orioles. And even if Basallo doesn't work out to the level the Orioles think, which is certainly possible, again, he just turned 21. He's been in the big leagues for a week. We just don't know. The most you are ever paying per year is $15 million, right? That final team option is $18 million, but if he's somehow really terrible, you wouldn't pick that up. But most of the most you're paying per year is $15 million. That is what the Orioles spent for 1 year of 41-year-old Charlie Morton this offseason. Like, that is the going rate for a 41-year-old starting pitcher. I don't think $15 million, especially, the contract doesn't even get to $15 million until 2032. By then, like, a solid 1-year deal is going to be $22, $23 million. Like, this is going to get even cheaper and cheaper, seemingly, as time goes on. So you hear about all that and you say, okay, Connor, then on the flip side, why is Samuel Basallo and his agency accepting a deal like this? And that is another fair question. And this happens in baseball a lot. Samuel Basallo is not the first player to sign an extension like this, whether he was already in the big leagues or just getting to the big leagues. There are some criminally low ones that have been signed, like Ozzie Albies of the Braves. There was a similar deal to this that Jackson Chourio signed last year in spring training before he debuted with the Brewers and then had just an unbelievable rookie season. He signed an 8-year, $82 million contract, so a little bit more expensive than Basallo's, but fairly similar for him. And he's been hurt a lot this year, but he was awesome in his first season, and it's already looking like it's going to be a giant steal for the Brewers having Chourio for that long under that deal. So why would Chourio take that? Why would Basallo take that? Well, first of all, you would think he wants financial security for him and his family. Now, of course, when the Orioles signed Samuel Basallo out of the Dominican Republic as an international free agent at age 16 back in 2021, he got a $1.3 million signing bonus. At the time, that was the most money the Orioles had given to an international free agent under Mike Elias. But a lot of that immediately is going to go to his family. Usually the trainers get a cut of that money. It's going to go to other expenses for Basallo, and that is a one-time payment of $1.3 million. Now, you could say, Connor, if I got a one-time payment of $1.3 million, I'd be set. But there's a lot of people for him to cover, and a one-time payment of $1.3 million, unfortunately, in today's society, isn't just going to have you set for the rest of your life if you're not making a lot more money after that. $67 million guaranteed secures him and his entire family for life. And he is certainly leaving money on the table if he's good. Even just in those arbitration years, he may have made more in ARB than what he's going to get in those years, the $4, $7, and $11 million. He might even be leaving money on the table there. But this is him saying, I want this financial security, and clearly likes and wants to be in Baltimore long term. And of course, if he's this good, those 3 extra years the O's got on the deal, right? 32, 33, 34, he would be making way more money those years had he become a free agent after 2031, because he would be 27 years old in the prime of his career hitting free agency. That is how much you'd have to think he just wants this financial security right now. But it's not all about that, because Basallo is so young, with him just turning 21, that even if he plays out the full 8 years plus the team option, so 9 more years with the Orioles, and he finally becomes a free agent after 2034, he'll still only be 30 years old. Like, it's not like he's going to be 36 and looking for 1-year old man deals. He could still get a lucrative long-term deal in free agency when he's 30 years old after this entire thing. So he could still cash in even further than these 8 years and $67 million. I certainly think Basallo is leaving money on the table for this deal. No question about that. I think it's honestly likely that how his career goes, we'll look back and say the Orioles got a steal here and Basallo left a lot of money on the table. But I will never blame a player for taking care of his family financially and taking that guaranteed money in front of him. Because again, he's a catcher. Those guys get beat up more than any other position. They're more at risk for injuries. You never know what could happen. Maybe he gets to the point where it's 2031 and he's been so injured and had some struggles, he's just never going to get that big deal. And he regrets taking this money. And it's kind of unclear like what Basallo's full family financial situation is. I don't want to assume what it is, but I can assume it's not like a player like Jackson Holliday, who had a dad who was an MLB multi-time All-Star and made over $100 million playing in the big leagues. I think it's fair to say that Basallo is not coming from that same situation. And so it's a different calculus for a guy like Basallo to a guy like Holliday, who are both 21-year-old top prospects, to potentially accept an extension offer like this from the Orioles. That's why Basallo, you would think, would take this kind of deal. So, you talk about the financials, you talk about the skill of Basallo. Like, this is a guy who could be a special player for a long time. The big question that is honestly annoying that it's on fans' minds more than Basallo, because I think people just love to be miserable, is you can't even celebrate Samuel Basallo's extension. Finally, the O's giving out an extension for 1 second before saying they're trading Adley Rutschman. Let's all take a step back and take a deep breath, and let's have a real conversation coming up next. What does this deal mean, and what does it not mean for Adley Rutschman? That is next to finish off the show. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th, that is 2 days from now, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer in the MVP race. Maybe it's not Lamar Jackson. Maybe you're looking at Derrick Henry. Crown your champion in August. Perfect time to put that money on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is 1 day and 1 day only. And it's at FanDuel. Play your game. So as Samuel Basallo signs this 8-year contract extension with the Orioles on Friday, the final piece of the puzzle here is Basallo is a catcher. And the current face of the Orioles franchise, you could argue, is also a catcher in Adley Rutschman. And the big question that came out immediately, it even came out since Basallo was called up last week, is what does this all mean for Adley Rutschman? Let's have a real look into what it means. Because yes, you are committing money to another catcher in Samuel Basallo, who plays the same position as Adley. First and foremost, this does not mean they are trading Adley Rutschman or that the Orioles are done with Adley Rutschman. Is it possible that the O's would trade Adley Rutschman before he hits free agency? Yeah. Was it possible a week ago before Basallo was extended? Was it possible 2 weeks ago when Basallo was still in AAA? It was a possibility then. It's still a possibility now. Basallo getting this extension does not mean Adley Rutschman is on the trading block. It's just not the case. Sure, it's been tough for Adley since around the All-Star break last year. Had a bad finish to last season, bad start to this year, had the oblique injury, came back and was looking like Adley again, and then another oblique injury put him on the IL last week. And he could come back this year, but there's a chance he's out for the remainder of 2025, and it's basically a season and a half lost years for Adley Rutschman. However, he's still a good player. And whether they extended Basallo or not, Samuel Basallo was on the team next year. Whether he gets this extension or gets nothing of the kind, Basallo is on the Orioles 2026 opening day roster, as is Adley Rutschman. This extension doesn't change how the Orioles are going to be looking at their roster and looking at the catcher position for the next couple of seasons. They were going to be rostered together anyway. They're going to split time, which was going to be the case down the stretch this year had Adley not gotten injured again, with Adley catching more than Basallo, and Basallo playing first base and DHing when Adley catches, and essentially splitting it like Adley 4 to 5 times per week, Basallo 2 to 3 times per week in terms of when they catch. They give each other some off days, some DH time. Basallo plays some first base. That's how I see the Orioles doing it. The O's still believe in Adley, and he is still the number 1 catcher above Samuel Basallo on this team. That is very clear. What I think it does mean, I don't think it means the Orioles are trading Adley Rutschman. I don't think it means the Orioles have given up on Adley Rutschman. What I think it does mean is it's a little less likely today than it was 4 days ago that the Orioles would give out a contract extension to Adley Rutschman. Still very possible, but I think a little bit less likely. Adley is a free agent after 2027. So after this year, he's got 2 more seasons remaining before he hits free agency. So I would say because they have Basallo locked up through potentially 2034 as at least a part-time catcher with that kind of bat, there's more of a chance now that the Orioles, because it's human nature that they have some questions at least about Adley from what we've seen over the past year and a half. I have questions about him too. There is more of a chance they kind of see how he looks, at least in 2026 and into 2027, see how the team looks at that time, and make a decision when he hits free agency. I guess, if the team is bad in 2027 and Adley is not back to full force, they could potentially trade him at that deadline when he's an impending free agent. But that's not part of the plan, right? We're not talking about the future where the Orioles are bad. The plan is the Orioles get back to being a good team next year and beyond with Adley and Basallo in this lineup. But if Adley turns it back around, you can easily play both of these guys for years and years. Because as I said, Basallo is probably at most a part-time 80 games per year catcher. And that is in a vacuum where Adley Rutschman doesn't even exist. If Adley's still here and you can catch Adley 90 games and Basallo 70 games, that's a really good split with Basallo playing first base and DH for the rest of them. That is a catching tandem that nobody else in the big leagues has. Generally, catcher is a spot where one of your worst hitters is there. It's just the reality of the position. If you have not just one catcher who's a good hitter, because some teams have that, like Cal Raleigh, and that's a huge boost for the Mariners. But if your backup catcher is also your best hitter who's in there at DH and first base when he's not catching, that gives you a giant advantage that maybe no other team in Major League Baseball has. And that is kind of the dream of rostering Basallo and Adley together, at least for the next couple of years. And it's basically going to depend on Adley's performance. If Adley has a bounce back year next year, I could see the Orioles giving him a nice little 3 to 4 year extension and having both of them play together. If Adley's solid, but he never truly gets to the level they thought, maybe the O's just have him play it out in 2026 and 2027, and they let him walk in free agency and they turn to the next guy, whether it's, I don't think Ike Irish is a catcher long-term, but it's a Caden Bodine, it's another guy they draft, whoever it may be, they would have plans for that as well, but they are not making that decision at this point, August 24th of 2025. For the Orioles, that's for Adley. For the Orioles, this deal shows that they are willing to do these extensions. And that is huge because they were the only team in Major League Baseball until Friday that did not have a player on its roster that was under a team extension. That's crazy. They were the only team. These just disaster organizations like the Rockies and the Pirates and the A's and others all had guys under contract extensions. And the Orioles did not. It was absurd. And you started to worry, are they philosophically opposed to extending their own players? At the very least, this tells us that, wow, they actually do want to do this. That is very, very exciting. That should be applauded, and that should make you excited. It made me very excited when that news dropped on Friday. It's not just that, hey, Samuel Basallo is going to be in an Orioles uniform for potentially the next 9 years, and he's going to be really good, but also the O's are open to do this. And David Rubenstein spoke on Saturday at the Basallo extension press conference, and there were a lot of Orioles in the room supporting Basallo, and it kind of felt like Rubenstein was talking right to those players in that press conference, like, hey, we are open. We have the capital to do more of these extensions. And that was exciting too. So the question kind of becomes, who's next? Because the name you go to immediately is Gunnar Henderson. He's one of the best players in baseball. He's obviously the best player on this Orioles team. Free agency's coming up faster than you think. He's a free agent after 2028. He's only got 3 more seasons under contract after this. The issue is it's going to be hard to get a deal with Gunnar Henderson done. He's a Scott Boras client. Boras generally doesn't like having his players take especially pre-arb extensions. And I think Boras sees Henderson as potentially his next $500 million man and is advising him that that's going to be the best way to go. And I don't blame either of them for that because that's probably going to be the truth. Jackson Holliday, same thing. Also a Scott Boras client, also comes from the generational wealth from Matt Holliday, so less likely to kind of jump on an extension like Basallo got. So that can be tough. Jordan Westburg is also a Boras client, but I think he's kind of in a different category of player that may make it more likely for him to get one. So if you're asking, hey, kind of like who could be the next guys to get an extension if the Orioles really are offering these and working with these? Here's my top 5. Number 1, Trevor Rogers. He's a free agent after next year. It's been unbelievable. Sunday again was just incredible. Just do it. Let's get a couple years there. Colton Cowser. I think if he rebounds nicely for the final month of this season, he could be a fairly cheap extension where you like having a player like that. Jordan Westberg he would be number 1 if he weren't represented by Scott Boras, to be quite honest. He feels like the perfect type of player to extend for a while, but the Boras thing makes it tough. I still think he's on this list. Number 4, I would say Kyle Bradish. If we see a good version of Kyle Bradish at the end of this year, it looks like he's going to start Tuesday, and then at the start of next year, that's an extension that could get done, and I think would be very exciting to see. And then number 5 would be Dylan Beavers, kind of in the same category as Basallo. He's looked great in the week plus that he's been up. Why not get a cheap extension done like that if you can? But this is just exciting because it shows the Orioles are willing to do extensions for this. And then really the last thing this means for the Orioles is this is huge for the O's international scouting department, right? Mike Elias came in November 2018. He brought in Kobe Perez, who's still in that position to head up international scouting. And it was something that under Peter Angelos and Dan Duquette, the Orioles were just opposed to doing it, mostly under Peter Angelos. They were not spending any money where teams were finding so much talent in the Dominican Republic and Venezuela and other places internationally. Now, Basallo doesn't have sustained MLB success yet, but he is that first international success story for the Orioles. They only got him because he had a deal with the Yankees, but the Yankees lost international bonus pool money when they signed Garrett Cole, and so they had to just erase their deal with Basallo, and the O's jumped in and gave him $1.3 million. So these other 16-year-old kids who are thinking about signing with the Orioles, they can see Samuel Basallo. Okay, he got a good amount of money in his bonus. He got a chance to move up the minors. He debuted in the big leagues when he was just barely 21, and they immediately gave him a large contract extension. That is a story that you can tell from beginning to end. The last part waiting is, and then he became a superstar in the big leagues. Hopefully that is the ending to that story. But that's a good story to tell, and hopefully make more players interested in signing with the Orioles because they want to be on that exact same Samuel Basallo pathway. But at the end of the day, this is incredibly exciting for right now, for Basallo, for O's fans, and for the Orioles in general. And I don't think it means that, tomorrow we're going to see another extension, but it just makes it a little more likely that these things are going to happen because they got one done, and hopefully it starts to snowball with more and more, with more money spent, hopefully this offseason to get this team to rebound, and we can be in a good place again beginning in 2026. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Kind of a special Sunday episode because I wasn't around Friday when the news broke, so I had to get you a pod to break down everything about this Samuel Basallo extension. We'll have another episode tomorrow. Orioles dropping 3 out of 4 this weekend in the series against the Houston Astros. I will recap the final 3 games of that series coming up on a Monday episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.